The supermarket bustled with life, bright lights, beeping scanners, carts rattling on tiled floors. But for one elderly man standing quietly in the checkout line, the world was reduced to the voice of a young cashier yelling at him in front of a crowd. "Sir, I've told you 3 times already. Your card is declined. Either pay another way or step aside." Her voice was sharp, dismissive, and loud enough to turn every head near aisle 5. The man wrinkled, hunched, his coat worn and held together at the seams, fumbled nervously in his wallet. His fingers shook, either from age or embarrassment, no one could tell. I know there's money in there," he mumbled softly. "Yeah, right," the cashier snapped. "Next in line, please." His name was Mr. Harold Whitmore. At 82, he moved slowly but carried the remnants of dignity in the way he dressed, a pressed shirt beneath an old tweed coat, neatly combed gray hair, and polished shoes despite their age. The cashier, 23-year-old Amanda, was exhausted, overworked, and underpaid. Her patience had worn thin from dealing with difficult customers all day. But today wasn't just any bad day. It was the anniversary of the day her father had walked out and never returned. Harold, with his quiet demeanor and worn appearance, reminded her too much of the man who'd abandoned her. But Harold wasn't like her father. "I just need the medicine for my wife," Harold whispered, but Amanda had already moved on, serving the next customer with a forced smile. A young boy, no older than 10, tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mom, why was she yelling at the grandpa?" "Shh, don't get involved," the mother muttered, pulling him away. Harold turned slowly, picked up the small bag of items, medication, a loaf of bread, and some soup, and began walking toward the exit, empty-handed. As he reached the door, the security guard stepped in. "You planning to pay for that, old man?" I wasn't. She wouldn't let me finish my card." "Yeah, I bet. Come on, let's talk." The guard took Harold by the arm, not roughly, but firmly, and led him to a side room while onlookers whispered and pointed. From behind a customer service desk, a woman named Carol watched in dismay. She'd worked at the supermarket for 12 years and never liked how Amanda spoke to the elderly, especially those who seemed vulnerable. Something about Harold tugged at her heart. In that little back room, Harold sat quietly, eyes watery, hands folded. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," he said. "My wife, she's bedridden. I just wanted to get her food and her prescription. I swear I have the money." The security guard, who wasn't heartless, just doing his job, sighed. "Do you have another card or ID?" Harold pulled out a military ID, yellowed with age. The guard squinted. "Army?" "Once," Harold said. "A long time ago." Unbeknownst to everyone, a young woman in a green hoodie had recorded the entire scene at the checkout. Her name was Layla, a college journalism student and part-time content creator who believed in exposing social injustices. She didn't post the video immediately. Instead, she followed Harold when he was escorted into the back room. She asked Carol for the manager and explained what happened. Minutes later, the manager arrived, a man named Drew, who looked more like a stockbroker than a grocery store supervisor. Carol whispered everything she'd seen, and Layla showed him the footage. Drew frowned. "We need to fix this, immediately." Back in the small room, Drew entered and offered Harold a warm smile. "Mr. Whitmore, we're terribly sorry. It seems there's been a misunderstanding." Harold looked up. "I'm not trying to steal. I promise." "We know. Your card didn't process because of a network error. It wasn't your fault. We'll take care of your groceries and anything else you need." Amanda was summoned to the office. When she saw Harold sitting there, tears pooling in his tired eyes, something shifted in her expression. She tried to defend herself. He looked like what? Drew asked, folding his arms. "Someone who didn't deserve patience. Someone you could shout at like he wasn't human." Amanda looked down. Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "You didn't ask." Layla stepped forward. "He's a veteran. His wife is sick. You humiliated him for being old and poor, but you never knew who he really was." Amanda wiped her eyes and turned to Harold. I'm so sorry, sir." Harold simply nodded. "I forgive you." Carol brought in the groceries, more than Harold originally had. Drew handed him a gift card. "On behalf of our store, and thank you for your service." Layla was still recording, but now her eyes widened as Harold smiled faintly and reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a wrinkled photo of a younger man in uniform, shaking hands with the president. "Wait," Layla said, zooming in. "Is that—" "Yes," Harold nodded. "That was back when I received the Medal of Honor." Carol gasped. "You're General Whitmore? My dad told me stories about you." The room fell silent. Amanda's knees went weak. "Oh my God, I yelled at a war hero. It's okay, Harold said again, his voice hoarse. Sometimes life teaches us through pain. That evening, Layla uploaded the full video to her channel titled, "They Yelled at a Veteran, Then This Happened." The video went viral, comments flooded in. I cried watching this. What's wrong with people? So heartbreaking. Respect our elders. This man deserves a statue, not shame. But one comment stood out. Sometimes we're so busy judging people by how they look, we forget to ask what they've lived through. Let's be better. Amanda took a leave of absence. Not because she was forced to, but because she couldn't stop seeing Harold's face every time she looked in the mirror. She began volunteering at a local senior center, trying to make amends. Carol started a fundraiser to help Harold and his wife with medical expenses. Within 48 hours, they raised over $100. And Harold? He used most of the money to build a small shelter for veterans who, like him, had been forgotten. One morning, as Harold stood outside the new shelter, admiring the freshly painted sign, "Whitmore Home for Heroes," a sleek black car pulled up. The window rolled down slowly. Inside sat a man in a sharp suit, staring at Harold through dark sunglasses. "You don't remember me, do you?" Harold squinted, confused. "I'm sorry, should I?" The man pulled out a photo from his coat pocket. A picture of two boys. One was Harold, the other he hadn't seen in over 60 years. The man's voice was cold. "You left me behind, Harold. Now it's time to pay for it." The hospital room was dimly lit, filled with the slow beeping of machines and the smell of antiseptic. Gina stood at the foot of the bed, her lips parted, heart pounding. Her grandmother, once the pillar of her childhood, now looked small and fragile beneath the pale sheets. "There's something you need to know about Mr. Dalton," Grandma murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes, cloudy with time, locked with Gina's. Gina leaned in, voice trembling. "What do you mean?" But before her grandmother could utter another word, a sharp beep pierced the room. Nurses rushed in. Gina was shoved gently aside as the machines began to scream in urgency. She watched, frozen, as the woman who raised her clung to life by a thread. They stabilized her, but she fell unconscious, and the room fell into silence once more. Gina walked out in a daze. The question gnawed at her mind like a ravenous animal. What could Grandma possibly know about that old man? Back at home, Gina couldn't sleep, not after everything. The video of her cruel outburst still looped online. Some comments were sympathetic, most weren't. She had made a mess of things, but this mystery was a different storm altogether. She pulled out an old photo album her grandmother had once shown her. The pages crackled with time, birthdays, picnics, that one trip to the beach. Then she stopped. There, in a worn photo taken decades ago, stood her grandmother, young and radiant. Next to her, smiling with unmistakable warmth, was Mr. Dalton. Gina's hands trembled. Why is he in our family photo album? The next morning, Gina returned to the hospital with the photo tucked in her purse. Her grandmother hadn't woken up, but the nurse said it might help to talk to her. She sat by her bedside, held her fragile hand, and whispered, "Grandma, who is he to you? Was he family? A friend?" She placed the photo on the bedside table. "Did he hurt you or help you?" "I don't understand." No response, only the steady beat. Gina stood and turned to leave, but a soft rustle stopped her. She spun around. Her grandmother's fingers had twitched, her eyes fluttered open. She pointed slowly to the photo. And then she said, in the barest breath, "He's your grandfather." Gina staggered back as if struck. What? But her grandmother's eyes had shut again. Gina's mind whirled. It wasn't possible. Her mother had never spoken about her father. Her grandmother always said he disappeared, that he wasn't the kind of man worth knowing. But Mr. Dalton? The kind, quiet man she'd yelled at, who never raised his voice back, who had only looked at her with that mournful sadness as though he knew her. That was him? She stumbled out of the hospital, tears burning her eyes. The world seemed too loud, too cruel, and in her heart confusion bloomed like wildfire. Back at the store, Gina tried to keep her distance. Everyone still looked at her with judgment, whispers trailed behind her like shadows. But the assistant manager pulled her aside. "You might want to know," he said. "Mr. Dalton's been coming around. Just watching. Doesn't say a word. Just sits out." Sure enough, the next day, Gina stepped out during her break, and there he was, sitting on the park bench across the street, looking tired, lost, and somehow expectant. She approached slowly, her voice cracked. "You knew?" Mr. Dalton turned his head. His face was unreadable. "I did." "You are my grandfather?" He nodded, just once. His eyes were watery, tired. I've watched you grow up from afar. Your mother never wanted me near. Gina sat beside him, her body trembling. Why didn't you tell me when I yelled at you? A pause. Then, because I thought I deserved it. And there, on that bench, truth began to spill like shattered glass across pavement. Mr. Dalton told her everything. About how he fell in love with her grandmother when they were both still young. How they were torn apart by family disapproval, poverty, and the bitterness of racism in their time. How he left when her grandmother became pregnant, believing he wasn't good enough. How he'd come back years later to find she'd raised their daughter alone and didn't want his involvement. I stayed close, he said, watched from a distance. I started this store to be near, but I never expected to meet my granddaughter at the cash register. Tears spilled freely from Gina's eyes. All the hate, all the shame, all the prejudice. She had carried them unknowingly, projecting her pain onto the world, onto him. But there was one thing she still didn't understand. Why now? Why come in that day, when you knew I worked there? Mr. Dalton turned toward her, voice low. Because I saw the signs. I knew your grandmother was dying. I didn't want to leave this world without trying. And because he reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope, handed it to her with shaking fingers. Gina opened it. Inside was an old, yellowed birth certificate. Her mother's name, her grandmother's name, and under Father Thomas Dalton. The world spun again. This wasn't a coincidence. This was fate, cruel, tangled, but intentional. Gina whispered, "What do I do now?" Mr. Dalton looked at her with a mix of pride and pain. Make it right, break the chain. They sat in silence for a long time, the city humming around them. But as they stood to leave, something happened. A car, sleek and unfamiliar, pulled up across the street. The door opened and Gina's mother stepped out. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with fury. She marched across the street, heels striking like gunshots on pavement. You stay away from my daughter, she spat at Mr. Dalton, venom in every word. Gina blinked. Mom? You knew? Her mother turned to her, voice cracking. There's so much you don't know, Gina. He didn't just leave us, But before she could finish, her phone rang. She glanced down, her expression shifted. She turned to Gina, voice low and tight. It's your grandmother. She woke up, and she's asking for both of you. The hospital hallways felt longer than before, echoing every anxious step Gina took. Her mother walked beside her stiffly, lips tight. Mr. Dalton followed a few steps behind, his hands folded, eyes cast downward. Nobody spoke. When they reached the door, a nurse nodded solemnly. She's been waiting. Gina entered first. Her grandmother sat upright this time, her eyes brighter than they'd been in days. She smiled weakly. Come in, all of you. Sit. They did. Mr. Dalton hesitated at the threshold, but her grandmother gestured gently. You too, Thomas. It was the first time in years she had spoken his name out loud. There was silence. Thick, awkward, palpable. Then Grandma spoke. I didn't think I'd live long enough to see this moment, she said softly. 3 generations, 1 room, all torn apart by choices, shame, and silence. She looked at her daughter, Gina's mother, with a pointed sadness. You never told her the truth. And maybe I didn't either. Gina's mother stood sharply. Mom, no, don't start this. But the old woman didn't back down. She deserves to know. She turned to Gina. Your mother hated Thomas because she thought he left us. But he didn't. I told him to leave. Gina blinked. Why? Her grandmother's face trembled. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what people would say. Afraid of being with a man who had no money, no status, and no approval from my family. So I told him to go, and I told your mother he abandoned us. A stunned silence filled the room. But he came back, Grandma whispered, eyes misting. He came back for her, for both of us. I turned him away again, told him to stay out of her life. Gina's mother's voice broke. You said he was a coward. You said he didn't care. I lied, Grandma said, because the truth hurt worse. Gina turned to Mr. Dalton, heart racing. You tried to be there. He nodded. Every birthday, every first day of school, I was there. Just across the street, in the shadows. Your mother never knew. Gina's mother's hands clenched into fists. Why didn't you fight harder? I did, he said, voice low, but I had no rights, no voice, and every time I tried, I was met with a closed door. Grandma sobbed softly. I was wrong. I let pride and fear tear this family apart. She reached out and took Gina's hand. But you can fix it, baby. You can be the bridge. Gina nodded, her chest tight with emotion. But then her grandmother's eyes darkened, her face suddenly serious. There's one more thing I have to tell you. The room stilled. She turned her gaze to Mr. Dalton. It wasn't just shame that made me send you away. It was what I found out after you left. Mr. Dalton's brows furrowed. What do you mean? Her voice dropped, haunted. I got a letter from someone you worked with back then. It said you were involved in something dangerous, something illegal. Gina's mother gasped. You never told me this. I didn't want to believe it, Grandma whispered, but the letter said you had secrets, Thomas. Secrets that could have put us all in danger. Mr. Dalton paled. She started, but his voice broke. I tried to protect us, Grandma said, turning to Gina, but now I don't know what was true and what was a lie. Gina looked between them, her head spinning. What kind of secrets? Grandma hesitated, then slowly lifted her hand and pointed to the small wooden box on the windowsill. In there, she whispered. Everything's in there. Gina rose shakily and picked it up. It was heavier than it looked. She unlatched it. Inside were dozens of old letters, some sealed, some opened, and on top, a faded black and white photograph of Mr. Dalton, standing beside a man in uniform with a police badge. Gina's breath caught in her throat. What is this? Mr. Dalton stood slowly, staring at the photo like he'd seen a ghost. That man, he whispered, he's not supposed to be in that photo. He was erased from everything years ago. Gina's mother stepped closer. Who is he? Mr. Dalton's eyes darkened, haunted by memories long buried. He turned to Gina. He was my partner. And if those letters say what I think they do, his voice dropped to a whisper. Then someone out there still doesn't want this truth coming out. The room was heavy with tension. The kind that sat on your chest and made every breath feel like it wasn't enough. Gina stared at the photograph again. The edges were worn, corners curled, but the image was clear. Mr. Dalton standing stiffly beside a man with cold, calculating eyes and a crooked smile. There was something unnerving about him, something that made the hair on her arms stand up. Who is he? Gina asked quietly, voice trembling. Mr. Dalton didn't answer immediately. He ran a shaking hand over his face, then looked at the ceiling like searching for strength. His name was Eric Madsen, he finally said. He was my partner back in the late 70s. We were cops in a department that prided itself on cleaning up crime. But what they didn't know was the dirtiest crimes were happening behind the badge. Gina's mother gasped, you were part of it? Mr. Dalton's eyes welled. No, but I found out too late. And when I tried to expose it, Eric turned on me. Gina held up one of the letters. What's in here? He took the letter from her hand and unfolded it. His eyes scanned the contents quickly. Then he sighed, a long, tired, it's a warning, he said, from another whistleblower, someone who knew what Eric had done, what we had stumbled into. These letters were supposed to reach internal affairs, but Eric, he intercepted them. He looked at the hospital bed, his gaze softening toward his wife. She got this one somehow, after I was gone. Gina's grandmother nodded faintly. It came in an unmarked envelope, no return address. I thought, if it was true, we were in danger. Mr. Dalton continued. Eric made sure I was labeled a rogue officer. He smeared my name, got me discharged. I lost everything. And the worst part, his jaw clenched. He didn't stop there. The room fell deathly quiet. He threatened your grandmother, said if I ever came back into your lives, he'd clean up the loose ends. That's why I stayed away. Tears pricked Gina's eyes. So you were protecting us? He nodded. All these years. Gina's mother turned away, a mix of guilt and sorrow on her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I thought you didn't care, but you were trying to keep us safe. Gina's grandmother coughed weakly from the bed. That man, Eric, he wasn't done. A few years later, someone broke into our home. Nothing was taken, but every photo of Thomas gone, burned. It was a message. Gina's hands shook as she opened another letter. The handwriting was messy, hurried. She read it aloud. They know I'm on to them. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Tell Thomas to go to the locker. Code is... She looked up. Locker? What locker? Mr. Dalton blinked. I know that number. That was my old badge number. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. There was a safety deposit box at the Midtown Trust Bank. I stored files there before they could find them. Evidence, documents, photos. But I haven't been back in decades. Gina's heart raced. What if it's still there? He hesitated. If it is, it could finally prove the truth. It could clear my name. Her grandmother smiled faintly. Then go. Find it. End this. Mr. Dalton looked to Gina. Will you come with me? Gina nodded. Yes, I want to see this through. The next day, Gina and Mr. Dalton stood outside the old Midtown Trust Bank. The building was still out-of-original, though its paint had faded and the marble columns bore cracks from time. Inside, an older clerk squinted at them through thick glasses. Yes? We need access to a box. Number 1127, Mr. Dalton said carefully. Name? Thomas Dalton. The man typed slowly into an ancient computer, then frowned. That box is flagged. Flagged? Gina asked, alarmed. The clerk looked uneasy. It's marked under restricted access. We'd need to call in a supervisor. Please do, Mr. Dalton said calmly, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. They waited. 10 minutes. Then 15. Finally, a tall man in a dark suit appeared. He walked over slowly, clipboard in hand. You're Mr. Dalton, he asked. Yes. I'm afraid I'll need to verify your identity before access. Mr. Dalton handed over his ID. The man examined it, nodded and gestured. Follow me. They walked through a narrow hallway, past reinforced doors, down into the basement vault. Gina's footsteps echoed on the cold stone floor. She glanced around, feeling a shiver crawl up her spine. The man stopped at a metal door. This is it. He inserted a key and turned it with a heavy clunk, then stepped aside. Mr. Dalton stepped forward and slowly pulled the drawer open. Inside was a thick envelope wrapped in plastic, a flash drive, a worn leather-bound journal, and something else. A photo of Eric Madsen, years older, dressed in a suit, standing beside a senator. Mr. Dalton picked it up, his hand trembling. I knew it, he whispered. He's still out there, and now he's more powerful than ever. Gina held up the flash drive. What's on this? I don't know, he said, but if it's what I think, it's everything. Suddenly, the vault lights flickered, and then the door slammed shut behind them. Gina spun around. What the? Mr. Dalton pounded on the door. Hello? No response. The overhead speakers crackled. Then a voice, low, calm, chilling. Well, you finally opened the box. Mr. Dalton froze. That voice, he whispered. The voice continued. I warned you not to come back, Thomas, but now that you have a pause, you leave me no choice. The lights inside the vault flickered again. Then everything went dark. Complete silence followed, so still Gina could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Grandpa, she whispered, gripping his arm. I'm here, he said gently. Stay close. A faint red glow illuminated the vault. Emergency lighting. The steel door behind them was sealed. Gina tried her phone. No signal. Mr. Dalton looked at the envelope, the flash drive, the journal. We can't lose this, he muttered, stuffing them into his coat. Do you think he's watching us? Gina asked, her voice trembling. Mr. Dalton looked at the red dot blinking faintly in the upper corner of the room. Yes, he said grimly. He's watching everything. Upstairs, the tall man in the dark suit, the so-called supervisor, walked calmly out of the bank and into a waiting car. He made a single call. They opened the box. A pause. No, I locked them in. They're not going anywhere.
He hung up.
Behind him, across the street, someone else watched quietly from a parked sedan. A woman. Her phone buzzed. Target confirmed. Dalton and granddaughter in vault. Phase 2 in motion. She stared at the screen, then lifted her eyes toward the bank, her expression unreadable. Back inside, Mr. Dalton examined the vault. There used to be an override switch behind the central pillar, he said, pointing. It was part of an old fire safety mechanism. Together, they pushed aside a metal shelf. Dust poured from behind it. Gina spotted a small hatch panel. Mr. Dalton pulled at it with his pocket knife, revealing frayed wires and a switch panel. Still here. He flipped the switch. Nothing. Then suddenly, click. The emergency lights blinked again, and a second door to their left hissed open slowly. A secret passage. They stared at it, stunned. Where does it go? Gina asked. Mr. Dalton shook his head. I didn't even know this existed. He stepped forward. They entered a narrow hallway, dimly lit with old yellow bulbs that buzzed overhead. The air smelled of dust, metal, and something else. Burned oil, maybe. The path led downward. Gina touched the concrete wall. Why would a bank have this? Because this bank isn't just a bank, Mr. Dalton said. It was one of the drop points, a place where people like Madsen stored secrets no one was supposed to find. Gina's pulse quickened. So we're walking into his territory? He didn't answer. After minutes of winding passages, they emerged into a room. It looked like a surveillance hub. Old monitors lined the walls, most of them black, a few blinking with camera feeds, stairwells, parking garages, offices. On one monitor, Gina saw herself and Mr. Dalton in the vault, just moments ago. Another screen showed the outside of the bank and a black car pulling up. She pointed, "That's him, I think that's him arriving." Mr. Dalton stared at the screen. "Then we're out of time." He turned to the computer set up in the corner. "Let's find out what else he's hiding." He sat, typing into the terminal. Old directories popped up, encrypted files, folders labeled with initials, dates, and codes. "This is his whole operation," he murmured. "And this," he clicked a file. A grainy video began to play. It showed a room, a man tied to a chair, beaten, bleeding. Gina looked away. "Oh my God. That's one of the whistleblowers," Mr. Dalton said. "He tried to speak out about Eric 10 years ago. He vanished. Everyone assumed he left the country." The screen glitched. Then, the same man from the vault speaker, Eric, appeared on screen, walking into the frame. "Talk," Eric said calmly. The man in the chair screamed. Gina covered her mouth. "That's the kind of man we're dealing with," Mr. Dalton said. "And if he knows we've seen this..." Suddenly, a noise behind them. The sound of a lock disengaging. A second door began to open slowly behind them. Footsteps echoed. And then another voice. Female. Strong. Calm. "Don't move." Gina spun around, eyes wide. A woman stepped forward from the shadows, gun drawn, the same one who had been in the parked car across the street. Mr. Dalton raised his hands. "Who are you?" "I'm not here to hurt you," she said, badge flipping open quickly. "FBI, Agent Clara Hayes. We've been tracking Eric Madsen for years." Gina's eyes widened. "You knew about this?" She nodded. "We've been close, but never had enough evidence to pin him." Mr. Dalton frowned. "Then why didn't you stop him?" "Because every time we got close, someone died." She pointed to the flash drive sticking out of his coat. "What you have there could end all of it. That's why he's coming for you." Gina stepped back. "Then help us get out." Agent Hayes nodded. "I will, but there's something you need to know first." "A beat." "You're not the only ones who opened a box today." Gina and Mr. Dalton exchanged a look. "What do you mean?" he asked. She turned toward the monitors and clicked on a second feed. A hospital room. A woman. Gina's jaw dropped. That's Grandma's room." Agent Hayes said quietly, "They're not going after you. They're going after the people you love." For a long moment, the room was silent. Then Gina bolted forward, grabbing Agent Hayes by the arm. "You have to get us out, now." Agent Hayes nodded and tapped her earpiece. "Alpha Team, move to target location, confirm safety of subject in hospital room 4B." The line crackled, but no answer came. Mr. Dalton stared at the screen, fists clenched. "What did we do, Gina? What did we pull her into?" Gina turned. "No, you didn't pull her into anything. Eric did. And now we finish this." Agent Hayes tapped rapidly on the keyboard, downloading files from the surveillance system. "This is the only backup of the footage. If Eric finds this room, he'll destroy it." The drive beeped. "Download complete." "Let's go," she said. The trio exited through the back tunnel. Emerging behind a row of shuttered shops 2 blocks from the bank, Hayes led them to a black SUV, windows tinted and engine running. As soon as they got in, Hayes hit the gas. "We'll head to the safe house first. There's a secure line there and maybe contact from the team." Gina sat in the back shaking. She pulled out her phone, still no signal. Her fingers hovered over a picture, her grandmother smiling, holding a cup of tea. "I should have never left her alone." "You had no choice," Mr. Dalton said softly. "You were protecting the truth." But it didn't feel like truth. It felt like a cost. At the hospital, a man dressed in scrubs walked quietly into room 4B. It wasn't a nurse or a doctor. In his hand, a small silver case. Inside, a syringe. He approached the bed slowly. "Hello again, Eleanor," he whispered. The woman in the bed stirred, then turned. Not Eleanor, a mannequin. The figure spun around, and before the man could react, someone grabbed him from behind. 2 agents tackled him to the floor. "Secure the syringe," one shouted. "We got him. It's the cleaner." The man just smiled. "You stopped me today." Pause. But she's still in play. Back in the SUV, Agent Hayes received a message on her screen. "Target secure. Cleaner detained." But Code Vesper initiated. Her face went pale. "What is it?" Mr. Dalton asked. She hesitated. "Code Vesper means Madsen is activating his last resort. He never expected this much of his empire to fall in one day." Gina frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Hayes said slowly, "he's going to disappear and take as many people down with him as he can." Suddenly, screech. A truck swerved across their path, forcing Hayes to slam the brakes. Multiple black SUVs surrounded them from all directions. Doors opened. Men stepped out. Not police, not FBI, private operatives, heavily armed. "We've been compromised," Hayes muttered. "Get ready to run." She passed Mr. Dalton the flash drive. "Take this. You're the only one left." "He hasn't corrupted." "But where do we go?" Gina asked. Hayes turned to her. "There's only one place left safe enough." She pulled out a sealed envelope and handed it to Gina. "Deliver this to a man named Felix Crane. He lives off-grid, used to be one of us, until Eric tried to silence him. If anyone can finish this, it's him." Gunshots cracked outside. The windows shattered. Smoke filled the air. Hayes opened the side door, shielding them. "Run!" Gina and Mr. Dalton bolted into the trees, clutching the flash drive and envelope. Behind them, the SUV exploded. Gina screamed. Mr. Dalton pulled her forward. "Don't look back, just keep going." They ran into the darkness toward the unknown. But as they crossed the road, a shadowy figure stepped into their path. A tall man in a gray coat, and in his hand was a photograph. A young Gina, with Eric as her godfather. Rain fell in quiet sheets as Gina stared at the photograph. Her lungs heaved, her throat dry. She took a step forward, peering through the dim light cast by the man's flashlight. The man was older, late 50s maybe. Scarred hands, eyes like steel. His coat was military gray, boots caked in mud. Who are you?" she finally whispered. He didn't answer at first. Instead, he held the photo out like a relic. "You don't remember this day, do you?" Mr. Dalton stepped forward. "Gina, stay behind me." But Gina's voice was hollow. "That's me, at the lake house. I was 5. I thought those memories were dreams." "Not dreams," the man said. "Buried truths." Gina's eyes welled. "Why is Eric holding me? Why do I look happy?" The man finally spoke. "Because once he loved you like a daughter." The forest went silent. Even the trees seemed to lean in. They followed him deeper into the woods reluctantly. He led them into a camouflaged shelter hidden beneath a fallen logging cabin. Inside, dim oil lamps cast dancing shadows across old radio equipment and rusted filing cabinets. Mr. Dalton stared. "This place looks like it hasn't been touched in years." "Because it wasn't supposed to be," the man replied. "I'm Felix Crane." Gina's eyes widened. "You're the one Hayes told us to find." "I know," he said. "She was the best we had. If she sent you here, it means it's worse than I feared." He motioned for them to sit and took the flash drive from Mr. Dalton's hand. Plugging it into an ancient terminal, lines of code began to pour across the screen. "What I'm about to show you," Felix said, "is everything Eric has buried. But before you see it, you need to know the truth about your mother." Gina's breath caught in her chest. My mother." Mr. Dalton looked away. Felix's voice softened. "Your mother, Elena, was one of the brightest minds in covert surveillance. She was recruited into a classified task force, one I led. Eric was part of that team, too. He and your mother, they were close. Too close." Gina sat back slowly, blinking away tears. "You're telling me my mother and Eric—" "Not romantically," Felix said quickly, "but like brother and sister. She trusted him more than anyone. She helped him rise. She made him powerful." "But she's dead," Gina said. "Car crash. I was a kid." Felix nodded grimly. "That's what the reports say." But the reports were falsified. The terminal beeped, and a video appeared. A grainy feed. A dim parking garage. A woman, Gina's mother, arguing with someone. Then, a car. A scream. And the explosion. "I found this footage 2 years ago," Felix said. "Your mother didn't die in a crash. She was murdered. Silenced. After she discovered Eric was using the agency to eliminate whistleblowers." Gina's hands trembled. "Why? Why didn't anyone tell me?" Mr. Dalton stood, tears in his eyes. "Because I promised her I wouldn't. She told me that if anything happened to her, I should take you far from this world. Give you a normal life." Gina turned toward him, voice cracking. "You let me believe she died in an accident. You let me live a lie." "I was trying to protect you," he said softly. Felix leaned forward. "But lies rot the soul. And Eric's soul is already blackened." The terminal flashed again. New footage, more documents, bank accounts, shell companies. The charity Eric claimed to run, a laundering front. The incident with the elderly man, Mr. Dalton, was no coincidence. Eric had flagged him for elimination years ago, fearing he still had access to Elena's old files. This is all damning, Felix said. But it's not enough. We need the encryption key. Elena kept it in one place only. She and Eric knew. Gina stared. The lake house. Felix nodded. We have to go back, and quickly. A knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps on the trap door. Felix froze. That's not good, he whispered. Another knock, and a voice. I wouldn't come out if I were you, Felix. Gina gasped. That voice. Smooth. Mocking. Familiar. Eric. Gina, the voice called out. You always were the smartest of the lot. Shame about your mother. But if you come with me now, I promise not to finish what I started. Mr. Dalton grabbed Felix's old pistol and cocked it. He found us. Felix cursed. He must have tracked the flash drive signal. We're out of time. The trap door rattled. Footsteps. More voices surrounding them. Eric's voice again, colder now. Last chance, Gina. Open the door or I do it for you. Gina turned to Felix. What do we do? He grabbed the switch on the wall. This cabin was built in the war. It's rigged to collapse if we needed to. Her eyes widened. You're going to blow it up? Only if we can't escape. But we've got one shot. He handed Gina a small drive. The real files are on here. Take them. Get to the lake case. Find the key. Expose him. What about you? I'll hold them off. No, Gina started, but Mr. Dalton grabbed her. Go. Boom! The door blasted inward. Smoke. Shouting. Gina and Mr. Dalton slipped out through the emergency hatch beneath the floor, crawling into wet roots and darkness. But just as they emerged, Gina looked back one last time, only to see Eric standing in the smoke-filled doorway, smiling, and holding something up. Her mother's locket. He pressed a button. It opened. Inside, not a picture, a SIM card. Then he whispered into the smoke, you want the truth? You'll have to choose who lives to hear it. Rain danced on the windshield as the rusted pickup truck sped down winding back roads. Felix's old vehicle was their only lifeline now, and Gina gripped the steering wheel like it was the last solid thing in her world. Mr. Dalton sat silently beside her, staring out the window. His bandaged arm throbbed, but his silence was louder than any pain. I didn't mean to yell back there, Gina said softly. You had every right to, he replied. I should have told you about your mother a long time ago, but I was afraid you'd chase the same ghost that took her from us. I'm already chasing it, she whispered, but now I'm chasing it with eyes open. The lake house appeared like a phantom through the mist. Nestled among pines, untouched by time, its shutters clattered in the wind. Gina stepped out first. Her boots crunched on the gravel path that she vaguely remembered from her childhood. Memories surfaced in fragments. A yellow kite, her mother's laugh, a song on the radio. She paused on the porch, hand trembling, as she reached for the door. The key was still under the 3rd flower pot. Inside, the house was frozen in time. Dust blanketed the furniture, but nothing had been disturbed. Picture frames lined the walls, including one of Elena holding a baby, Gina near the fireplace. She loved this place, Mr. Dalton said quietly. Said it felt safe, even when the world was burning. Gina walked to the old grandfather clock and pressed her hand against its side. A small click. The panel opened. Inside, a steel lockbox. She opened it slowly. Inside was a folded letter addressed to Gina, and an envelope containing an access card with a strange insignia, an eye within a triangle. She opened the letter with shaking hands. If you're reading this, my darling, it means the storm has come. The truth is buried in a place even I dared not return to. The answers you seek lie not in what Eric did, but why. Go to where it all began. Find the Wellstone Vault. Use the access card. And remember, not everyone who helps you is a friend. Trust the stars. Trust the stars? Gina repeated aloud. Mr. Dalton frowned. That was Elena's code phrase when she wanted me to know we were being watched. Suddenly, the lights in the house flickered. Then died. Gina froze. Did you hear that? Footsteps. Outside. Then a knock. Not on the front door. On the back one. Mr. Dalton moved toward the kitchen, pistol drawn. But it was Gina who opened the door. She blinked into the rain. A woman stood there, soaked to the bone, wearing a black coat. Eyes fierce. I don't have time to explain, the woman said quickly, but if you want to survive the next hour, you need to come with me. Gina stepped back. Who are you? The woman pulled out a badge. Federal seal. But not Hayes Agency. A different one. Obscure. Name's Agent Lynn, she said. I worked with your mother, and I know what's on that SIM card Eric has, because I helped encode it. Gina narrowed her eyes. Then you know about the vault. I do, Lynn said, but Eric's already halfway there. Mr. Dalton stepped aside Gina. Why should we trust you? Lynn looked at him grimly. Because if we don't leave now, this house is going to burn with us inside it. Suddenly, crack, a bullet shattered the front window. Gina screamed and dropped to the floor as another shot ripped through the wall behind her. Flames licked the curtains. They've set the house on fire, Mr. Dalton shouted. Agent Lynn grabbed Gina. We move now. They bolted out the back, diving into the trees. Fire engulfed the lake house behind them, the orange glow swallowing years of memories. As they fled, Lynn shouted over her shoulder, if Eric gets to the vault first, it's over. For all of us. But as they reached the edge of the woods, they found the truck gone, tires slashed, their route cut off. And worse, someone stood by the burning tray line, clapping slowly. Eric, didn't your mother ever teach you, he said with a smirk, not to trust strangers? He raised a small device, pressed a button, and suddenly, Agent Lynn collapsed, seizing, convulsing, her veins glowing faintly under her skin. Gina screamed, rushing to her, but Eric shook his head. She was never on your side, Gina. Gina stared at Lynn's body, but something was off. In her convulsing hand, she had slipped Gina a card, a second access key, and scribbled on it, Vault is a decoy. Truth is deeper. Eric stepped forward, gun raised. One last chance, kid, he said. Come with me, or burn with your secrets. The forest crackled behind her, the flames devouring the lake house like a hungry beast. Trees hissed and fell. Smoke curled into the black sky. Gina stood frozen, one hand clutching Agent Lynn's second keycard, the other trembling at her side. Eric's voice cut through the chaos. I don't want to hurt you, Gina. I'm the only one who ever told your mother the truth. You just never bothered to ask the right questions. Mr. Dalton lifted his pistol with shaking hands, but Eric didn't flinch. Shoot me, Eric smirked, and you'll never find the vault or what's beneath it. Gina stepped in between them. No one's shooting anyone, she said. Her voice was low, trembling, but fierce. You want me? Then talk. Eric's expression softened, almost regretful. He lowered his weapon. Your mother was no angel, Gina. She built a system capable of rewriting people's lives. Erika's rewriting faces. She didn't just expose injustice. She engineered justice at a cost. That's a lie, Mr. Dalton growled. Eric turned to him. Is it? Or did you just choose not to know what the woman you loved was really building? Gina's heart thundered. What was she building? Eric stepped closer, and the firelight danced across his face, revealing a scar just beneath his left ear. She called it Seraphim, a data intelligence prototype that could alter social records across government servers. Imagine an algorithm so powerful it could make someone homeless with a keystroke, or rich, or invisible. That's not what she told me, Dalton whispered. No, Eric replied, because she didn't want you to stop her. Gina clenched her fists. So you killed her? I didn't kill her, Eric snapped. She faked her death with my help. Silence. The fire roared behind them. Even the wind held its breath. What? Gina whispered. She was compromised. Her research stolen. The people funding her turned on her. She came to me for help. I staged her death, helped her disappear, but she knew someone would come for Seraphim eventually. So she split it into 3 encrypted fragments. One of them is on the SIM card in her locket. The second is buried in the Wellstone vault. And the third? Gina asked, barely breathing. Eric looked at her long and hard, then his voice cracked. It's inside you. Gina's knees buckled, but she didn't fall. What do you mean? Mr. Dalton asked. She encoded a fragment in Gina's neural memory when she was a child, used auditory cues, song patterns, childhood lullabies to bury it deep. You've had it all along, Gina. That's why the others want you alive. Suddenly, a distant hum vibrated through the trees. Then headlights. SUVs. At least 4. Unmarked. Eric stepped back. They're here, and they won't wait to ask questions. They'll take you, extract the fragment, and leave you empty. You think I'm the villain? They make me look like a Boy Scout. Gina turned to Mr. Dalton. We can't stay. Eric tossed her a small flash drive. Find the last safe house. Red Hill. Use the key card. The truth's in the catacombs. But Gina, she turned, eyes wide. You'll have to remember what you've spent your whole life forgetting. It'll hurt badly. The vehicle screeched to a stop. Masked men jumped out, weapons drawn. Go! Eric roared. Gunfire erupted. Mr. Dalton dragged Gina through the woods, bullets tearing past trees. Behind them, Eric stayed, returning fire, buying them time. But just as they neared the cliff's edge, overlooking the river, Mr. Dalton stumbled. A bullet had grazed his leg. Go, he yelled. I'm not leaving you. You have to. Gina looked back. The soldiers were closing in. No time. Tears streamed down her face. Then she leapt into the river below. The cold water swallowed her whole. Everything blurred. Her mother's voice, the lullaby. Twinkle, twinkle, little. Suddenly, a memory flashed. A basement room. A doctor. Her mother crying. And something injected into her neck. Gina gasped, clawed to the surface, crawled to the muddy bank alone. The soldiers were still above, and then from the tree line across the river, a cloaked figure appeared, watching her, then beckoned silently. Gina staggered forward. Who are you? She whispered. The figure pulled back their hood, and Gina's entire world shattered. You? The woman smiled. Hello, Gina? The wind howled through the pines. The river gurgled behind her, carrying away the screams, the bullets, the chaos. Gina stood frozen in the mud, her body soaked and shivering, not from cold, but from disbelief. Mom? She whispered. Elena Madsen stepped into the moonlight. She looked older, thinner, but her eyes, sharp, intelligent, fierce, hadn't aged a day. I'm sorry it had to be like this, Elena said softly. I never wanted you to find out this way. Gina stumbled backwards. You faked your death? You let me believe you were gone for 7 years. I had no choice. They were going to dismantle everything I built. Use Seraphim for surveillance, manipulation. It was never meant to control people. It was meant to protect the voiceless. Gina's hands curled into fists. And you protected them by abandoning me? Elena's face broke. She moved forward slowly, like she was afraid Gina might vanish. I gave you up to keep you safe. The neural implant, it was the only place I knew the final key would be untouchable. But why me? I was just a kid. Because I knew they wouldn't suspect a child. And I knew you'd be strong enough to survive this someday. Gina shook her head, tears streaming. You were wrong. No, Gina, Elena said gently, brushing a lock of hair from her daughter's face. You're here. That means I was right. From the shadows, a noise. Mr. Dalton, limping, blood on his shirt, emerged from the forest's edge. Elena, he rasped. She turned, her breath catching. Caleb. Even now, in the middle of a conspiracy, gunfire, betrayal, they looked at each other like time had stood still. I thought you were dead, he said. I know, she whispered, but I never stopped watching over her. Gina looked between them, heart pounding. You both kept secrets from me. Dalton bowed his head. I tried to protect you from the truth. But now the world needs that truth. Elena stepped forward and placed a small silver disc in Gina's hand. This is the final decryption node. The vault isn't just a safe, it's a server, deep under Red Hill. The system's housed there, but it won't open without you. Why? Because your brain holds the final code. It's locked in your subconscious memory, encoded into a song I used to hum to you every night. Gina's eyes widened. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Suddenly, her mind lit up with images, data sequences, flickers of binary, a series of long-forgotten lullabies layered with command lines, file access codes, like her entire childhood had been a riddle. You programmed me, Gina said, almost breathless. No, Elena corrected, I trusted you. Sirens echoed in the distance. They found us, Dalton said, loading his pistol. Elena turned. We have minutes, maybe less. Gina, you have to make a choice. Gina looked down at the disc in her hand. What happens if I open Seraphim? Elena's eyes darkened. The truth gets out. Every hidden abuse, every doctored police report, every rigged algorithm that denied people loans, homes, justice, it all comes to light. And what happens to me? You'll never be invisible again. You'll be targeted. Dalton stepped beside her, but you'll also become the reason justice can't be silenced. Tires screeched in the distance. Boots on gravel. Flashlights cut through the trees. No more running, Gina whispered. She reached into her coat, pulled out the locket, the one her mother gave her all those years ago. She snapped it open. Inside, a microchip. Still intact. She placed it into the silver disc Elena gave her. Then she closed her eyes and began to hum. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Suddenly, her vision shifted. The forest faded. A neural interface bloomed before her mind's eye, holographic streams of code dancing across the void. Voice, her mother's voice, echoed within her. If you're hearing this, Gina, it means you're ready. Seraphim activates now. Gina opened her eyes. The ground trembled. In the distance, Red Hill's side, a massive rocky face split open. A hidden door emerged from the earth, and with it, a platform rising like something out of a science fiction film. A staircase led deep underground. They stared. Elena looked at Gina with quiet pride. It's time. They began to descend. As they reached the threshold, gunfire erupted behind them. Dalton turned and returned fire while Elena covered Gina. Just then, a single shot echoed louder than the rest. Elena gasped. Blood sprayed across the concrete wall. Mom! Gina caught her as she fell to her knees. Lena looked up, pain racking her face, but she smiled. Keep going. I'm so proud of you. No, stay with me. Gina sobbed. Dalton grabbed her shoulder. We can't stop now. If you don't finish this, everything she died for is wasted. They carried her body down the stairs. Behind them, the doorway began to close. Inside the vault, humming with servers, screens, and flickering red lights, stood a central panel. Gina approached, inserted the drive. Her hand hovered over the activation switch. Tears on her cheeks. Dalton whispered, "Do it." But just before she touched it, a voice echoed through the vault. Wait. They turned. From the shadows, a man stepped forward. Sharp suit, cold eye, a face Gina remembered from old photos, press releases. Senator Vernon Clay, the man who sponsored Elena's original research. The man who declared her a traitor. The man whose foundation had grown unnaturally rich in the years since her death. You're about to make a mistake, he said calmly. I know what Seraphim can do, but let me show you what it's already done. Your mother wasn't the hero you think. Gina's breath hitched? What are you talking about? Senator Clay smirked. She didn't create Seraphim to protect justice. She built it to punish those she thought deserved it. She played God, and now you're about to become just like her. He pulled out a tablet. With a swipe, images filled the air. Videos of protests shut down with doctored footage. People branded criminals with edited evidence. Even Eric, his crimes traced back to Seraphim's influence. Dalton looked stunned. Elena's system had been used. We can still fix it, Clay said. Together, I can offer you power, protection, nunding. Gina stared at the activation button, then at the flashing images. Her mother's voice echoed in her heart. Never let the truth be buried, even if it buries you. Gina looked at Dalton, then back at Clay, and with a trembling breath, she whispered, I choose the truth. She slammed the activation switch. The vault lit up. Sirens blared. Outside, satellites realigned. Worldwide servers buzzed, files decrypted. Screens across the nation, across the world, flickered with unredacted truth. People paused, watched, read, then began to rise. Whispers became roars. Protests, court cases, arrests, reform. Justice awakened. And just as Gina stepped back, exhausted, barely standing, a faint voice echoed through the system. Hello, Gina. She froze. The voice was Elena's. But you're gone. The screen flashed, and a holographic projection of Elena appeared. You've done well, but we're not finished. Gina stared in disbelief. I don't understand. Elena's hologram smiled. Seraphim wasn't just a tool for justice. It was phase 1. Phase 2 is called Dominion, and you're the key. Blackout. Final moral reflection. When truth is buried beneath lies, it takes courage to dig it out, especially when it hurts. Gina learned that justice is not perfect. It's messy, dangerous, and personal. But when we stop running from the truth, we finally start healing. Dilladang. What would you do if you were in Gina's shoes? Would you release the truth, knowing it could destroy people, maybe even the ones you love? Let's talk in the comments.